Good morning. It is Christmas Eve, the day before Christmas Eve. Yesterday I told you a story about a real story that happened this year. Today I want to tell you a real Christmas story that happened this year, or one I'm making a Christmas story, if you will. A few weeks back, Courtney Boyd, one of our church members, got married to her sweetheart, Grady Wright. And the wedding was just beautiful, as weddings always are at First Cumberland. The most dramatic moment, of course, in the wedding is when the bride comes into the room for the first time. The whole wedding party has made their way down that long aisle. We have heard the organ play Pachelbel's Canon in D, and then the organ shifts. And the doors at the back have been shut, but they are flung open as those opening chords to Here Comes the Bride come in, and the bride and her dad come in. And that exact thing, of course, happened at Courtney's wedding. And Courtney and Dugan came in the back, and they began making their way down the aisle. The attention of everybody in the church, of course, turned to see Courtney and her dad come down the aisle. And from my perspective standing, I can see a bunch of backs of heads as everybody has their head turned to see Courtney coming down the aisle. And I'm enjoying watching her come down the aisle, and also catching a glance sideways every now and again to see how Grady is holding up through all of this. And as I looked over at Grady at one point, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. I'm sure it's happened before, I just haven't noticed it before. But as I looked at Grady, my eyes went past him, and I saw on the front row there, Grady's mother, Patty, was the one person in the whole sanctuary who had not turned to see Courtney come in. Instead, her eyes were absolutely focused on Grady, and there was nothing that was going to take her eyes off of Grady. And I had so much fun just watching her, because she obviously loved her son so much, and she was enjoying so much watching him watch the love of his life coming down that aisle. And I told her later that I couldn't remember ever seeing that happen before. And she said, I had already had the chance to see Courtney a little earlier in the day, and I knew Grady hadn't, and I just wanted to see Grady as he saw her come down that aisle. I think that's a Christmas story, because Christmas is one of those holidays, maybe the holiday, that the secular side of our culture has tried to steal away from us the most. And so we can tend to get all caught up in the lights and in the presents and in the Christmas get-togethers, which I know we won't be having quite as much this year, but the Christmas meals and all of the trappings of Christmas, and we may forget the most important thing, of course, about Christmas isn't all of that stuff, but the most important thing about Christmas is the fact that God came to be with us in a manger, which is exactly what this is. I happened to come into this very stall a couple of years ago about sunset on Christmas Eve. I guess I was feeding horses or something. I don't really remember. But I walked into this stall for some reason. The setting sun rays were coming through the slats in the barn, and I was just overwhelmed with the awe of the fact that God came to us in a manger, and the hay that he slept on was likely not all that soft, but actually hay is kind of almost by definition rather prickly and not all that terribly comfortable. And yet God did that for us, and we need to make sure that we pay attention. If you ask somebody on the street in Bethlehem or in Nazareth or anywhere else that year, what's important, what's going on right now, they would tell you there's the census and the taxation, and they might tell you about Herod's latest travesty, whatever he had done, or something that Caesar had done. Politics are important, or maybe there was something else going on in the wider culture, and they would talk about that. But of course, because it was almost by definition missable, they missed the most important event, and that was that Christ was born that day. It took the angels coming to tell the shepherds, go and see this. And so let me invite you over the next day or two to keep your eyes and your ears open for how God wants to share with you the wonder that he came to be with us, not in a flashy way, not making tremendous headlines, but in a very simple way. And yet that simple presence in our lives made the difference for everyone. Let us be like Patty Wright and keep our eyes on that which is most important, and pay attention to that which should be most important to us. And I just have this sense that if we open our eyes open our ears. God will surprise us in a wonderful way. A way we don't expect any more than we would expect him to show up in a manger. But God will surprise us. Pay attention. I'd love to hear your stories about how God surprises you with his presence this Christmas. God will surprise us because God is with us.